do all kinds of things for Berlin, the first international tennis match, the Congress for Cultural Public Relations, and then I became, afterwards I was hired by the Marshall Plan, and then I created my idea was the Berlinale, that was my idea, and I founded the Berlinale.
Was this part of the Marshall Plan? Did you think
That
that's
was
nice
part-
to communicate and so
That
on?
was part of the Marshall Plan, then information, then it was my idea. The Marshall Plan had a problem. The West German industry...
A short question before. Is the Marshall Plan like 10 pages or like 10,000 pages, or how can we imagine this?
The Marshall Plan, no, about 5 pages.
5 pages?
5 to 10 pages, not that much.
Mm.
But the problem that we had in the Marshall Plan was that the West German industry in West Berlin wanted to leave West Berlin because the Russians were all around and they couldn't do anything proper. And every time they wanted to drive to Berlin, they had to go through Russian sector and Russian police and so on and so forth. So my idea was we have to do something with the German industry. That was our problem. And we told the German industry that had factories and offices in Berlin, West Berlin, if you leave, you won't get any money from the Marshall Plan. And we created the KfW, Kreditanstalt für Wiederaufbau.
Mm-hmm.
We gave them the money, but with our instructions.
Mm-hmm.
And they still are following these instructions. Because part of the instructions was the German industry would get part of the money to keep and part as a credit to repay.
This is still running today.
So that is still running today.
Yeah.
I was last year, I think last year, I was with the KfW and gave a short speech about the Marshall Plan. That's still going on. And right now, it's that big drug company where the question is, shall they give this 70 million? And they only want to give the 70 million euro if the local states guarantee, and so on. I mean, it goes on. So that was part of it. And under this, how can I make West Berlin more open to the West and more interesting to the world, more valuable to the world?
So,
and that is where the film festival came.
Okay. So everything was planned centralized, and can you imagine that there's the same center still now that is actually planning the whole communication worldwide through all the medias?
We had control, and you don't have control anymore. You see, when I did in 1953, when in East Germany was that short revolution, I had met Arno Scholz, then the owner and a social democrat, but a right-wing Western social democrat in Grunewald, publishing the Telegraph daily paper. And I had worked on some projects with him, and long story short, when this explosion in East Berlin happened, there were photos. And through the connection that Arno had in Eastern Germany, in the DDR, where many of the railroad people were all old social democrats, through his connections, we managed to borrow the addressograph plates of the German communist weekly magazine, and we managed to borrow a truck and paper and the postal paper bags, and we printed an edition in West Berlin with Volkspolizei on the front and on the back, and inside all the photos of that revolution. Mm. And we delivered it through the East German post office to Mr. Peake and Kotewall and all those bastards on their desk about a few hours before they got the original local one.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And of course the Russians immediately surrounded Tempelhof printing establishment in East Berlin, thinking that that's where it came from, because that's where we had borrowed the Resoglaph plates from. And there was one West Berlin printer working there, and Arno knew that, and he called him before and said, you don't go work there, you work for me now, here, so that they had nothing to do, they couldn't do anything about it. Mm. And of course the Senate afterwards, back there is a big vase with gold KPM stuff that the Senate of Berlin gave me to thank me for what we did and so on and so forth. Mm.
Okay.
So that was part of the psychological warfare, or peace fair. Mm.
You are also still giving active presentation at universities.
Yeah, I recently had the Basler Wirtschaftsgymnasium, where I gave a speech about communication. And I was to 16, 17-year-olds.
So that's the University of Economics, right? Wirtschaftsgymnasium.
The Wirtschaftsgymnasium is yes, it's a local economic university.
Okay.
And there were 16 and 17-year-olds, about 40 of them. And but apparently, according to the professor who asked me to come and do that, was a rarity. At the end, they almost as a body stood up and applauded, and then asked quite a lot of questions. And I hope that I convinced them the need to separate facts from fiction, and to work on that, and to try in their jobs to communicate between, or differentiate in their communication between fact and fiction.
Fiction or opinion?
Fiction means non-fact in English.
Can you give an example?
You can call that opinion. Fiction is also opinion, yes.
Mm-hmm. Can you make an example so that we all understand?
Well, an example of fact is if it pours really heavy rain, and I say there are a few drops.
So this is fiction.
That's fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Because the water is rising on the bottom, it pours so much. Mm-hmm. And I say a few drops. Mm-hmm. That's fiction. That's not the truth. The truth is it's raining hell, and soon the floor will be covered with water.
But how can people nowadays find out the truth? I mean, if I go to the internet, I can read many more than I have ever before. Facts or opinions. How can I find out the truth?
Well,
what do I need to do, or what did you suggest to these young people to do?
That is the problem of the current IT revolution. And the only way I think at this stage, you at this moment can do it by looking at and listening to as many opinions as you find on the internet, and then filter out the things that they all say the same, that may be the fact, and the rest is their opinion. Mm. But it's very difficult to do that, and that is the problem that we face in our total development now. How can we teach the young people as they grow up to keep observing the fact and separate the fact from their Bauchgefühl, from their feeling?
And also, why should they do? I mean, I spend hours of researching, and you also spend hours of researching, but my son, he spends hours to play football. And so why should they do? Will they only understand that they should do when the world even gets worse again?
They are already now feel a certain uncertainty. They feel it's uncertain. They have on the internet, they hang on the internet and hear all kinds of problems and things and don't know the answer. What they don't know is how to go about finding out, and since they are being plastered with material, they don't bother to try to real research. And I think the problem lies in communication. We talked before about it. It might be a very good idea to create a foundation, non-political, that has nothing to say, just to give the money for the internet, to have a program that young people and upcoming teachers must look at in their different languages, and must certify that they have looked at it in certain tests, that teaches them to differentiate between fact and fiction, and teaches them how to communicate that kind of knowledge to the young people, to their pupils. Then only if we start at the lowest level in school to make the child understand the difference between fact and fiction. Mm-hmm. And we can do that, and it's not as difficult as it sounds. Then can we get the young people to grow up to become responsible voters. Mm. And a responsible voter must agree if he knows, or she, if they know what the actual situation is, they must agree to the sad news that they have to be content with less and not continuously more. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a very good idea to maybe it exists already, some educational internet platform to do this, to teach this to really young human beings, and you're talking about first grade already. So 6 years, you think you should start already 5 years.
Yeah. But first I have to teach the teachers, because the teachers don't know what the hell we're talking about.
Yeah, but my experience is that the kids, they learn by themselves if they have a good program. Of course, but who decides what is a good program?
Who is going to give them that material information?
This has to be programmed, of course, by somebody that is true and that respects the basic the basic rights of human beings.
You can do that even with programs directly for the kids. On the other hand, the question that one must ask oneself is, should one really make the kids, we're now talking about the 6-year-olds, should one force them to do even more looking at the screen